Hello and welcome to the Ask Atticus podcast. My name is Leon Cook. I'm founder partner of Atticus Partners, and I'm speaking to you from inside the conference centre in Manchester at the Conservative Party conference. And I'm joined down the line today by Peter Cardwell, former SPAD extraordinaire, political editor at TalkTV and senior counsel to Atticus. Hi, Peter. How are you?
Hi, Leon. Very well indeed. Good to be here in Manchester.
So there was very much unease coming into this week, I think. If I think about a year ago when we spoke about what was going to happen vis-a-vis Liz Truss and her premiership and how that unravelled, Rishi's now been at the helm for more or less a year. The numbers haven't moved massively. His first 100 days weren't as impactful as he would like to have hoped. But what do you think his team and he would have thought of coming into this week was a win for them?
I think a win for them is getting through it without anything dramatic happening. Some possible move to turn the supertanker around for the Conservatives, but they're well behind in every single poll, even if the poll gap narrows slightly, and that is some chink of light for them. I spoke to a senior advisor in number 10 earlier today who said, look, it's all about Wednesday. Forget everything else that's happening. Forget all the distractions and all the stuff to do with people who are behind the scenes and people like Suella Braverman and Kemi Badenoch who are maybe jockeying for a position a bit. It's all about the Prime Minister's speech on Wednesday. That's the big point where he communicates not just to the members of the Conservative Party who need to go out banging those doors in a general election, but also the people in the country and what message will be there.
But Peter, do you think there is anything that he can say? So I've been, doing the rounds here in Manchester as well, and there's a lot of discussion about people being on manoeuvres, whether that be Kemi, Penny, Suella, in fact, numerous names actually. Is there anything that he can say in the hall on Wednesday which will actually get people back into rank and file alignment? Or do you think that as a party, certainly at the higher echelons of the stack, they think, well, we have an idea of what's coming down the pike, irrespective of what a now 10-point poll lead for Labour looks like, which is a shrinking from where it was previously, or that they might actually think we could actually go on and win this?
There are definitely some in number 10 who think that there is a chance to come through in some way for the Conservatives to win in 2024. Personally, I think that's wishful thinking. But certainly, if there is the possible end of 13 years of Conservative rule, well, then there are always going to be people who will be on manoeuvres. And Suella Braverman was questioned about this, actually, and she said it was a little bit crass to talk about it when she was talking about, as she put it, such serious issues in regard to immigration. But there's absolutely no doubt that probably less than a year away from an election, there are lots of people thinking, what comes next if the Conservatives lose? And unsurprisingly, that is really the talk of conference. There have been a few other interventions as well. Michael Gove, who I don't think is going to be the next leader of the Conservative Party, but is someone who has been a big player and will remain so, is someone who said yesterday, talking about tax, throwing a bit of a grenade into that. Jeremy Hunt had to respond to a lot of that this morning on the media. I think their announcement today on the living wage has fallen pretty flat. I don't think too many people are actually talking about it necessarily. I think it's really about the sort of internal machinations of the Conservative Party. It's also, I don't know about you, Leon, but the atmosphere seems a bit flat in terms of the number of people here. Now, that may well be to do with the train strikes yesterday and some people coming from right around the country. Maybe that will go up a bit more. But James Cleverly's speech yesterday, for example, I mean, he is someone who is a very charismatic speaker, someone who can draw a crowd, but he didn't draw a crowd of delegates here. So there are, I think this is definitely, a very critical people are calling it sort of awake for a dead party. I don't think it's as bad as all that, but certainly it does seem a lot flatter than previous conferences, even last year actually, with Liz Truss, although that was dramatic and interesting for lots of different reasons.
I would agree with you. I don't think the numbers are quite as bad as would otherwise have been suggested. Yes, there are less people here, but and it's definitely not the barnstorming one on record. I was also in two receptions last night where James Cleverly spoke, and he gave the best for Britain and the competence economic argument about why the Conservatives need to be allowed to effectively finish the job, that old mantra. I think that the announcements that have come thus far, I think it's very interesting that the 1 billion towns fund, which will obviously go to lots of, I'd imagine, key marginal constituencies up and down the country, and be seen to be helping there. So the red meat of discussion or trailed in the media today about clamping down welfare and benefits, or those that are frauding the system because they can't raise money from elsewhere, which is Jeremy Hunt being clear that he would not in the budget lower tax, which is, I think, obviously red meat to Conservative voters. I mean, other stuff which is a little bit more niche, 4 billion for tax subs, which is obviously, keep the home base safe. It's all about defence. So these are good traditional Conservative measures. Do you think there's anything else that the party can announce this week which will raise eyebrows, or fiscally they just not, or monetarily they're not have headroom to do any of that that will actually gain votes?
Well, there's some announcements that don't always need money necessarily. Sometimes in justice, for example, there are various things. I remember, for example, when I was a special advisor, we had a big announcement. It was actually the most popular announcement of the 2019 conference, which was about extending prison sentences for people convicted of the most serious crimes. So whilst there is some cost to that, it's not nearly as much as something requiring a tax rise. So I think there will be probably something to do with justice maybe tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if that is something that is quite dramatic. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. A lot of these announcements are working within the current fiscal framework. And even just before a conference there on Saturday, we had that letter from those 30 MPs headed by Jake Berry that they won't be voting for the autumn statement if there are any tax rises. So this is, in terms of the room for manoeuvre that both Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor and Rishi Sunak have as Prime Minister, they've boxed themselves in to a degree, but they're also boxed in by the people who are boxing them in, their own MPs, saying they won't vote for various things. So it's quite a tight spot that both of them are in.
My experience of the party over the course of last year, since Liz Truss's ill-fated short tenure, has become incredibly factional, and the age-old adage of you can't land a plane without both wings. How do you see that playing out here in terms of the what would be the Cameroons or the Wets, those on the centre right and the right wing of the party? I feel like things have shifted a little bit within the Conservative Party to a stance of whereby if we're going to win this thing, we have to think about it's actually a bit of a quandary in terms of, does the party literally play to the base and think about those people who are going to go out and knock on doors and vote for them, or are they actually trying to win this from the centre? How do you see it?
I don't think they'll try and win it from the centre, and that's part of the reason why I don't think they're going to win. It's interesting, certainly, in terms of the fact that this is the only time when ordinary Conservative members who paid their 25 quid to be a member of the, not all the time, but get access to the Prime Minister, members of the Cabinet and so on, who they wouldn't otherwise usually see apart from at the odd AGM or a dinner or something like that. So really, I think there's got to be a rousing, especially from the Prime Minister on Wednesday, talking of something that will help him get those people out to knock the doors and to back him as well, because you've got to remember that he hasn't been voted for by the members, whereas Liz Truss was. So I think it's a very, very difficult dance to, a lot of them are, and also talk to the country and to the Hall. That's a very, very difficult thing. But you're absolutely right. The Conservative Party is far more factional. Divided parties do not win elections, and that's part of the reason why I think Labour are going to win the next general election.
Well, I'm sure Rishi Sunak is not ever so thankful that Liz Truss is appearing here this week. I'm not entirely sure what that is supposed to achieve, or the great revival of one's reputation. But do you think that she speaks for still a good deal of the party, a large percentage of the membership of the party? And if so, what number is it? How problematic is it that she's here and still, one would say, lobbing proverbial grenades into the tent?
I think in the sense that she is here, she has a big event. She's been to every Conservative conference, I think, for about 20, 25 years, certainly since she stopped being a Liberal Democrat anyway. But no, she's certainly causing headlines today, more headlines, I think, than the Chancellor. But she's essentially saying the same thing. She's saying she wants taxes to be low. She wants corporation tax to be at 19%, 19 pence in the pound. That's fair enough. That's what she has said previously. Other prime ministers are here as well. Former Prime Minister Theresa May is here as well. But usually people do sit back a bit. Boris Johnson is not here. He was always for many, many years, a massive distraction from the Prime Minister, certainly in the last sort of 10 or 12 years. So Liz Truss definitely represents a part of the Conservative Party in terms of people who really genuinely believe her vision completely. I think you're looking at a quarter to a third of the Conservative membership, probably. That's just my own estimation. Obviously, she won a majority to become leader, but there were lots of factors within that, not necessarily people who share her economic outlook. Also, it was proved in that she went too fast not to work. Some people may say, look, it would have worked if she got more time. That was Liz Truss's plan. But the thing with Liz Truss is she's not going to be silenced by anybody. She's not going to sit down and shut up. She's going to continue as an MP, and she's going to be someone who will be a political figure, whether she's in the House of Commons, House of Lords, or wherever, for some years to come. And she's not going to say, simply because she's not Prime Minister, that she's going to be quiet.
I agree with that. So a couple of last questions for me, Peter. So I have read over the last couple of days that the idea that Rishi can lose this election and stay on, although there was a very unsavoury comment from one of his parliamentary colleagues that said, don't let the door hit him in the proverbial on the way out, were that to be the case. So do you think that is plausible? And part B of that question, there was a school of thought once that May would be the date in question for a general election, because he couldn't have a bad set of local election results and then 2 to 3 months later do it all over again. If there is there will be an election, when do you think it will be?
Okay, so I think it's unthinkable that Rishi Sunak would be the leader after an election if the Conservatives lose. The only caveat I would put is that if it's extremely close and you're looking at, probably another election very, very soon, say if there's a Labour minority administration that's very weak, for example, even with the Lib Dems, for example, they wouldn't get a majority if the Lib Dems have some sort of confidence and supply arrangement. There are all sorts of scenarios there, and a lot can happen. I think we're looking at an October or November election, because the big gamble is that the economy will turn around, things will get better. But the problem is there's a disconnection between what the leadership is saying and what people feel, and people respond to politics, as you know very well, Leon, emotionally. And when you say, right, we've halved inflation, well, people will perhaps not understand the economics of and think, well, why aren't prices stabilizing or going down? Even if they have inflation, prices will still go up by 5%. People won't feel as if the pound in their pocket is worth more. They won't feel as if they have more money in their pocket. So I think this is a really interesting, very difficult set of economic circumstances. The gamble is that things will be better by the autumn. I think it's unlikely that there'll be an election on the 4th of May, but I used to call myself the Professor Neil Ferguson of political prediction, and that I would always make very confident predictions. We remember him doing that during COVID, and they would always be wrong. So probably May.
So there you are, folks. Stick your money on exactly the opposite of what Peter has just said. I've just thought of one last one. I've just thought of one last one, Peter. Do you think that the front bench, those that he has on the pitch, are going to be the ones that now stay in position, or do you think that for the Westminster anoraks and politicos, they can expect another reshuffle and moving of the deck chairs? Or do you think where we are is who's going to face the election?
Big reshuffle before Christmas.
Well, there you are.
I think reshuffle before Christmas. I think that happens, and then Rishi Sunak says, "This is the team."
Well, the speculation can then start about who gets moved, and who's up and who's down. But thank you very much for Peter for sharing your thoughts with us here. So this was the Ask Atticus podcast. If you want to hear and learn any more about what's happening here at Party Conference here in Manchester, or any of the other party conferences, which we will also be attending, please get in touch. But from now, I'll leave you from the hall. Peter, thanks for your time. See you next time.